time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Property Podcast. We're up to episode 35. I'm Rob Bence, and with me every week is Rob Dix, the property geek. Hi Rob, how are you?
Good morning, Rob. Really well, thank you. This week, episode 35 already. This one is called The Biggest Regrets in Property Investment. But it's not going to be a big downer, I promise. We're just going to run through a few common regrets so you can make sure that you avoid them. We've also got a news story, of course, and one of those resources of the week that seems like a tiny little thing, but it might just save you a whole lot of time every week. So stay around for that.
But before we get going, we always like to acknowledge the fantastic reviews. And Rob, they continue to come thick and fast. And this week, the following reviews are from. First up comes from Ideal Anything. And it says, excellent podcast, very motivational. I've been investing in property for 25 years, just sitting back, collecting the rent from my portfolio, happily ticking along. But Rob and Rob have motivated me with their property podcasts. It was just what I needed to get me buying more property again. I've done 3 great deals this month and hope to buy another this year. Thank you, guys. Wow,
no messing around there.
I love these reviews. Well done, Ideal Anything. That's incredible. Extremely useful, even for a pro. I religiously listen to the Property Podcast on my commute to work and find it extremely useful and very easy listening. As a head of a professional and well-regarded property search team, I'm always keen to listen and learn from others, and these guys know their stuff. I look forward to meeting them at the Property Podcast meetup tonight, and who knows, one day I might achieve my goal and get a slot on the show. So as you can see, we're a little bit behind on the reviews because we had so many in, but that's from Nicholas Finn. Thank you. That's a lovely review as well. I hope you enjoyed the meetup. And we'll definitely be doing more in the future, so listen out, people, for that. And finally, Mick from Dubai says, superb. This podcast was the first podcast I ever listened to. It's given me the confidence to start investing in property, and I'm looking forward to working with Rob Benson, RMP, on this new project. The podcast is superb, and I look forward to my long bike rides with the soothing sounds of the two Robs ringing in my ears. The resources have been great, and I strongly recommend everyone reads Rich Dad Poor Dad. Keep up the great work. And Mick, as I said, this is a couple of months ago when we got these reviews. Not only has Mick been in touch, but he has actually done his first investment as well. So, Rob, the 3 reviews there, 2 from, experienced investors already. And Mick, what he does for a living, I won't say on air, but, he's very high up in what he does. So it's nice that we get all the newbies coming in and saying they're learning and just about to get started or have just started. But it's nice to have a mix there of people who've been there and done it, who are enjoying the show as well.
Yeah, I feel honoured to have all these people listening to us, people who have been around a lot longer than I have. And so it's great to have them listening. And always a little bit freaked out when someone emails and says, I was listening to you while I was doing the gardening or something. It's really weird to think that we're in people's ears at all these times, but it's a great privilege as well. That leads on to what we've been doing this week, which of course is the Property Hub. Yeah,
thepropertyhub.net. Wow. What a first week. So we've had a ton of emails in, some questions, lots of nice comments, some really nice words. So thank you, everyone who's been in touch. Of course, Rob, we encouraged everyone to go to thepropertyhub.net and sign up. And we've had a lot of people doing that. Tons of people just on the free list. So when the free service kicks up, they're ready to go. Also, the propertyhub.net, we'll call extra for now, has gone crazy as well, Rob.
It has. Over half the slots have gone in the first week. Should probably wind back and say if you missed last week's show, you might not know what we're talking about.
True.
So last week, we finally announced what we've been secretly working away on for a couple of months now, which is called the Property Hub. It's at thepropertyhub.net. And this is a community that we're putting together to take what's kind of a one-way communication channel. It's kind of us talking to you, but then we get these reviews in and we get really nice emails and we occasionally meet people, but we want it to be far more of a two-way thing. And we want all our listeners to be able to talk to each other and learn from each other because there are so many different skills and it'd be great to connect everyone. So the Property Hub is what we came up with. We announced it. It's gone crazy with people signing up to it. We also have got the option to pay a monthly membership to get access to exclusive areas of the forum and training and all kinds of other bits and bobs. That's gone crazy as well, and that's really taken off. We're limiting that to 30 people at launch. I'm going to expand it after that. So over half of those 30 slots have gone. And we've just had so many really nice emails about it as well. So it's great that we kind of recognize what we saw as a need, and it seems like everyone agrees with us. So if you haven't got involved yet, do go over to thepropertyhub.net, put in your email address to be notified when it launches and make sure you get access. Take a look at the paid option and see if that's going to be worthwhile for you. That's going to be launching at the start of next year, but some people will be getting early access as we test it out. I'm just so excited because the interaction with the listeners is my favourite part of doing this podcast, and now we're going to have that all day, every day.
I'm just thrilled that we've got a forum that meets the needs of our listeners, because there's lots of good forums out there, but they're for either experienced investors, or there's, forums out there for hardcore landlords. But our podcast, it seems there's a different type of listenership, and yes, they can sort of try and fit into these other forums and still learn from them. But I think we can build something specifically for our listeners, because we know what they want by the barrage of emails we get every week and love receiving. So as you can tell, we're really excited. I just can't wait for it to launch for real. But in the meantime, get to thepropertyhub.net. As a bare minimum, sign up for the free list. And if you're interested, look at the paid option if you want all the extras and bits and bobs. So Rob, news this week, I've found your next destination on your worldwide working tour.
Oh yeah. Richard
Branson's reopened Necker Island, and you can rent it for, wait for it, only £37,000 a night.
Okay, and how many of my closest friends can I take with me?
Oh, well, the good news, Rob, is I was waiting for that. You can, as long as you pay for my airfare, I'm happy to come along, because you can get up to 30 adults in there and 6 children.
Okay, that's not too bad. I'm looking at the photos now. It looks all right. Looks like it'll probably meet my standards. Maybe when we do the first annual Property Hub meetup, we can have it there.
Yeah, our first international meetup. We just need 1 million people on the hub.
Yeah. If we get 1 million, I'll pay for it myself.
Brilliant. It's a fun story this week, but the pictures are just absolutely stunning of this property. And, we talk about investment a lot, but sometimes it's nice just to dream a little, and maybe this is exceeding most people's dreams, but, it's always good to have stretchy goals, and maybe it's one day to have your own island or just visit Richard's. But even so, everybody likes to be nosy. There's some good photos on there. Have a look, and we'll link to it in the show notes so you can see for yourself.
Okay, so let's move on then to the topic of the week, which this week we're calling the biggest regrets in property investment. This has come about because we both speak to investors on a daily basis. Rob, with RMP, obviously speaks to people all the time and has been doing so for years. For me, since starting this podcast and since writing my book, I've just been getting so many emails and having loads of great chats with people, speaking to people at all different levels. And through doing that, we've seen a pattern of common regrets that you get from people who've been in property investment a while. And so this episode is kind of making you aware of what those common regrets are, so you can make sure that you take steps to avoid them and you're not telling the same sorry story in a few years' time. So kick us off, Rob.
Okay, the first one is not setting goals and creating a strategy. So many people have this regret. Oh, I wish I'd set goals, or I wish I'd worked out a strategy. And the reason why I see this a lot is a lot of people come to meet me at RMP or get in touch on the phone that have done a couple of property investments, and then they've stopped and they've kind of got lost in the journey, lost motivation, or lost, why they even started in the first place. And what we have to do is start again with them. So we acknowledge the first couple of properties they've done. And what we have to do is get them to refocus on why they started that journey in the first place. I always ask them why. And then once we've got that why, we create a smart goal. Go and listen to episode 15 if you need to learn what a smart goal is. We set some smart goals with them and then build out a strategy. Because if you just jump into property investment, get going, then yes, your initial enthusiasm will carry you so far. But if you don't have a goal in mind, something to work towards, and a strategy, a roadmap, if you like, to get you there, then the chances are you're going to slow down or even stop at some point. Whereas if you have a specific goal and a specific strategy to get there, you're far more likely to be successful and not find yourself in a position I find so many of these investors in. Now, if you are in this position yourself, don't worry. You can fix it by setting goals and creating a strategy. Contact Rob or myself. We love doing this type of thing. We're happy to help. But if you're about to begin, then make sure you do this process so you don't have this regret as well. So you don't miss on opportunities in time because you haven't taken this initial step.
It's a really common one, and it's something that I wasn't necessarily aware of before I started speaking to so many more people in the last year or so. But it's so common to get people who've got a couple of properties, and then you think once you've got the first couple, then you're off to the races and you'll just keep going and going. But it doesn't really work out that way. You can get a couple, and even if nothing bad happens, you're collecting the rent, everything's great. If you don't have that strategy, then there's something missing. There's the motivation or knowing what to do next is missing, and you just stall. We even see that in some of the reviews we've had, Rob, people saying that they sort of got a couple of properties years ago, then hadn't really thought about it again until they started listening to the podcast or whatever. So that's a kind of a surprising regret for me. But yeah, the strategy is like, that's the one thing you need to do to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So the second common regret comes from not taking advice. A lot of people start property investment on a whim, just kind of jump in without taking any advice. And what normally happens there is they'll come to regret something in the future because they'll have made some expensive mistakes. So those mistakes can take many forms. It can either be buying a property that isn't a great investment, or not being aware of procedures to make sure that the rent gets paid and tenants are happy. It can be about not being aware of the tax allowances that are available to you. All kinds of bits that you might not know that are going to cost you money. And then years down the line, you'll be kind of adding up all the money that you've thrown away by not knowing about these things and by taking advice from professionals. At the extreme end, that can be jumping into something with really nowhere near enough thought, jumping into one of the risky areas that we've been talking about recently, like off-plan property or overseas property, which can be highly lucrative and you can minimize the risks very well if you know what you're doing. But if you just jump in, you can easily find yourself losing a lot of money and being put off property forever, like once bitten, twice shy kind of thing. Also, there's the chance that people have listened to the wrong advice. So you'll get people whose motives aren't necessarily to help you out, but are to make you do whatever it is that results in them getting paid. So you'll have people advising you of all kinds of things. There's even a dispatches program on the other week where you see estate agents telling people that they could get buy-to-let loans for their residential property and all that kind of thing, because it's bad advice. It was wrong, but that was what was resulted in the agent getting paid. If you listen to that kind of advice, you could get yourself into some really big trouble. So the antidote to that, all you need to do is seek advice from experienced investors and deal with experts. We've talked before about mortgage advisors, about accountants, about people who are preferably not just experts in their subject area, but are property investors themselves. So they know what you're trying to do and they really know how everything works. It's not just theoretical. They've done it themselves and they take their own advice. And to seeking advice from experienced investors. So there are always going to be people you can speak to. The Property Hub is something we're starting so everyone can learn from each other. And you're always very welcome to speak to us. We're happy to hear from anyone. So there's always advice to be had. There's free advice to be had. Don't let that be something that you skip out in your enthusiasm and end up regretting later. But I think if you're listening to this podcast, then you're certainly not someone who's just going to jump blindly into things. You're clearly on the right track with that already.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do see that this happens so often, Rob. You know, people, again, will approach you and I and say, I've done this and I've done that. And it's often a combination, and they're disappointed with where they're at. Either they're not as far on as they wanted to be, or they've actually lost money. Either they didn't take any advice at the beginning, or they took the wrong advice. You know, we talk about research, but research the people you're taking advice from. Have they been there and done it? They just force an advice on you because it suits their interests, or they just like to have an opinion on everything and don't really know what they're talking about. There's plenty of those people out there. I'm sure we all know one. Just be aware of the people you're taking the advice from too. Finally, this is the biggest regret of all. It's very common. I hear it a lot, and it may surprise you. It's not starting sooner. So not starting your property investment journey sooner. Now, nearly every investor who's begun will tell you this is their biggest regret. Because the thought of becoming a property investor is actually, in most cases, far more intimidating than reality. You know, the thought, the build up to it, you know, the parting with your hard-earned cash, the setting up the systems, it all feels a bit scary and intimidating if you haven't done it before. But actually, after you've done it and you've got everything set up as it should be and you did the right research, you kind of think, is that it? Is that what the fuss is about? Because if you do it right, your portfolio should not really give you too much trouble, because there's lots of things, and we've covered them in many podcasts, you can do to minimize the risks. And the amount of investors that say, you know what, I just wish it started sooner, is unbelievable, because the sooner you start, the better you'll do, because you've got more time on your side, and time is a big factor in property investment. The longer you have your portfolio, the better it will do. It sounds simple, but it is. And the amount of investors go, oh, but you know what? I wish I just did it a bit earlier, a few years earlier. People starting in their 30s always go, oh, I wish I'd started in my 20s and 40s and my 30s and so on. I hear it every day. We both started young, but I know we would have both loved to start sooner. Now, yes, it's a regret, and I'm not losing sleep over it, but if I knew then what I knew now, as people like to say, I definitely would have started even sooner than I did. It's definitely the biggest regret, the most common regret, and the one I certainly hear more often than any other.
Yeah, definitely. And I was speaking to someone at the Property Podcast meetup a couple of months back, and I can't remember his exact age, but I think he was 19 or something, and he was sort of telling me about all these plans he'd got and what he was going to do. It's like, I wish I was thinking about that when I was 19 instead of messing around in bands and stuff, because I could have been so much further ahead by now. So yeah, I think that it is a really common regret. However soon you start, you're going to wish you started sooner. The thing you said, Rob, about the reality not being as intimidating as the kind of the picture you build for yourself in advance, that's just so true. I've had people emailing me recently saying, I don't know if I'm ready to do this. I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. Then they'll lay out the most elaborate plan with just like everything clearly, completely thought of. It's like, you're fine. Just do it. They're completely prepared for this, and it's not as scary as you think it is. So yeah, really important. But people do kind of come up with excuses in their heads for why they can't get started.
Yeah, Rob, you're right. There's so many excuses out there. You may be listening to this podcast and saying, oh, that's fine, but ... And we've heard them all. If you don't want to invest in property, you'll find a story for yourself. And that's what it is. It's a story. You're just giving yourself a story to why you don't invest. So we're going to just run through a few of them and quickly blow all them out the water. The first one, Rob, is I don't have time. Well, that's rubbish. Set systems up, work with experts to take that time pressure off you, and you can invest in property, because we don't spend a lot of time on our portfolios.
No, you can always make more time if you need to as well. That counts even if you've got a family, an ailing grandparent, a dog, anything. You've always got the time. A busy job, it doesn't matter. You can always make time if something's important enough. The other one is, I don't know what to do. Well, there's an excellent book available called Property Investment for Beginners, which tells you everything you need to know. If you don't know what to do, chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're the kind of person who educates yourself. You know more than you think. There's plenty of advice out there for free in this podcast and elsewhere all over the place. You can find out anything you need to find out if it's sufficiently important to you. And if you really don't know, talk to us. We're always happy to help.
Yeah, next I hear an excuse quite often is, I don't have the contacts. Well, get them. If you're listening to this podcast, then I doubt these are the type of things you would say, but you probably hear them elsewhere. If you hear someone say, I don't have the contacts, well then put them on the podcast, because we've had tax planners on, we've had mortgage advisors on. The Property Geek podcast, there's been loads of people interviewed on Rob's podcast. There's loads of forums out there. The Property Hub is coming, so you'll be able to network on there as well. So it's not that difficult in this modern age to find the contacts. Research the people. Don't just go, oh, well, I read them on this or heard them on that, so they must be good. Make sure you do your research, and that stands for Rob and I as well. But if you research them and you still sound like they're decent people, then make contact.
Okay, next one is the excuse of, I don't have the money. Now, I'm not going to say to you, you don't need any money to get started in property investing. All you need is to come on my £10,000 course and I'll show you how to get started with no money. Just put it on your credit card, it'll be fine. No, you do need some money to get started, of course. But if property investing is important to you, if your financial future is more important to you than certain things now, like holidays or Sky TV or eating out, there are ways to get money together more quickly than you think. It plays into a whole world of personal finance stuff, which I'm really fascinated by, but we can't get into right now. If you don't have the money now, then fine. If you really have nothing, make it part of your plan to know how much money you need to get and say when you're going to have it by and how you're going to get there. We're not saying that everyone listening is in the position to go out and start instantly, but not having money cannot be an excuse for long, because you could always find a way of getting the money together for a deposit if it's important to you.
Absolutely. Read The Richest Man in Babylon. That book there will start you off on a path to saving, creating money to invest with. Next, I can't find a deal. Well, we've talked about this in certain parts over the podcasts as well, but there are plenty of people out there who will help you, and there are other ways of going about it yourself as well. We'll actually do a podcast on it, so we can absolutely make sure this is no longer an excuse. I can't find a deal. We'll do that in the coming weeks. on how to find an investment deal. But there are professionals out there who can help you, companies like RMP, but there are plenty of other good ones out there and bad, so do your research. And there are, ways of means of doing it yourself as well. You don't have to work with a company, and we'll run through those and help you learn and, educate you on how to do that. Just saying, oh, there's no deals out there is rubbish, because if other people are doing it, why can't you?
The next one you hear all the time, lending is tough, hard to get lending. Well, again, this is where speaking to experts really comes in useful. We've had Mortgage Broker on the program before. If you speak to a broker, there might just be options that you're not aware of. So, in fact, I'd say lending is not too bad at the moment. It's certainly cheap if you can get access to a mortgage. And don't be put off if someone's told you, or you've heard in the press, or someone down the pub told you that it's hard to get a mortgage if certain things apply. So if you're self-employed, if you have something on your credit file, all these kind of reasons why you might not be able to. Okay, maybe you won't have access to the best rates. Maybe you can't get anything at all. But just speak to an expert first, because there are all kinds of products out there and all kind of ways of legitimately putting your case forward to a lender, so they might be more likely to accept you, that an expert would be able to help you out with, which you wouldn't be able to do yourself. Ultimately, a very small price to pay if you need to pay a little bit of money to someone to help you out and get a deal that without that, you wouldn't be able to buy a property at all.
Next one, there's too much choice. Well, really simple. Set a goal, build a strategy, and the choice is narrowed down to your strategy. If that's what your challenge is, your excuse, if you like, then refer to earlier in this podcast, set a goal and a strategy, and that no longer becomes an issue. There's loads, there's loads of excuses out there that you can give yourself. We should have called this the biggest regrets and excuses in property, Rob, because really the excuses are just stories that you're giving yourself. If you really are serious about becoming a property investor, then you would find a way. And, you may not want to hear that, but it's true. The people who've invested in property already, there's some people I've worked with, Rob, who have saved for years to start their portfolio because they wanted it that bad. They were disciplined. I've spoken to someone in the last week and he's saved up a significant sum of money, and he said he's given up on lads' holidays. He's really been disciplined because this was so important to him. If it is that important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not, if it's just, oh, that would be nice, then you won't. It's as simple as that.
If you've got any of those excuses, then seriously work on overcoming them right now, because as soon as you finally invest, you're going to instantly have the same regret that all investors have. Why didn't I start sooner? However young you are, you're always going to wish you started earlier. So let's minimize that regret by starting as soon as possible.
Good stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one and took a lot out from it. But we've got our resource of the week next, Rob. And first up, I wanted to give you an update on Lift. So it's a habit app. It's from lift.do. That's the website. It'll be in the show notes if you want to have a look for yourself. And basically what happens is it helps you form habits. Now, a few weeks ago, we had it as the resource of the week. And like I said, I got out the habit of using it. Well, the mention on the podcast prompted me to start using it again, and I have been quite a lot, and I've got out the habit, thanks to this app, of checking my emails before breakfast. I used to wake up, pick up my smartphone, and jump on my emails within seconds of starting a day, which is terrible for two reasons. One, you're jumping straight into work mode from the second you've woken up, but also that bad habit will then structure the rest of your day. You're no longer in control of your day. Your emails are. Getting into a habit now of no longer checking my emails till after breakfast, I'm allowed to plan my day out first, plan what's important to me, and make sure I'm in control of my day, not the other way around. That app is fantastic because I'm on what you call a streak at the moment of not checking my emails before breakfast. And that's really down to that app, which is free. So have a look at it.
I've actually got another Lift app success story as well. Not from me, unfortunately, but I was speaking to a listener during the week who said that he'd started using Lift app after we mentioned it. I won't mention his name because I don't know if he'd be embarrassed by this, but he shouldn't be because I think it's brilliant. But he said to me that he'd identified maths as a real weakness of his. He's really bad with numbers, but he knows that if he wants to be investing in property, he needs to get better at it. So he downloaded a kids maths app for his phone, and he had a reminder on Lift to make sure he does it every day. And he's been doing it every day for a week or something. And I just thought that was the most brilliant thing. He's identified something he wants to be better at, and he's using Lift to get him there. And so I think it just shows how a really tiny little app can kind of change your life in a way if you use it in the right way.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant use of the app. And, people like that, you always know are going to do well. They're doing something that the normal person wouldn't do, just taking that extra effort to improve themselves. So whoever that is, well done.
Yeah, I was seriously impressed. Our other resource, you discovered it through me, but maybe you should tell us how you've been using it. But it's called You Can Book Me.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for this one. We make a list of resources that we're going to put on the show in advance. So anything we come across, we bob on a list and bring it out each week. And I noticed on the list there was a website called You Can Book Me. We'll put the link to the website in the show notes so you can see for yourself. But it's a free app. There's a paid version as well. I have, if you've been listening for a while, been setting up phone interviews for the next stage of recruitment here at RMP Property. And I've been using a schedule tool, a paid schedule tool, I might add, for a while, but I've not been completely happy with it. It's been a bit clunky. So I had a look at You Can Book Me. Rob sent me through a tutorial, which made a massive difference. Again, thanks, Rob. We should link to that in the show notes too. And I set up all the phone interviews using this tool for free. I might add, and I'm happy to pay for tools, but I didn't actually need to. In fact, I've cancelled the other tool I've used. You have to pay annually, so it's going to run for a few months yet. And I'm going to look at using the paid version for You Can Book Me, so we can do all the asset manager meetings, when I meet clients and stuff, arrange that through this service, because I think it's a far superior service than the one I've been using. And if you're just using it casually, the free version will be more than enough for most people.
I think the really cool thing about it is it synchronizes with your Google Calendar. So if you use Google as your calendar, then you can pull in the information. And so basically what you can do is give people a link where they can go and they can see where you've got free slots in your calendar and just book you for that time. One of the things I hate most is that whole game where you go, oh yeah, let's talk. How's Tuesday? Oh no, can't do Tuesday. What about Wednesday? Well, I could do the afternoon. Oh no, I can't do the afternoon. What about the following week? And it just goes on forever and ever and ever. By the time you add up the time that it takes to have all that back and forth, if you use this tool, it will eliminate all of that. You can just send someone a link. They can see what you've got free on your calendar and book it. And you can kind of do it two ways. You can either let them see all your availability and book in for whenever, or you can kind of do an office hours kind of thing where you can set specific times where you go, okay, like every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m., I'm happy to do phone calls. And so you can just send someone a link and they'll only see those times in your calendar. Whichever way you do it is one of those really tiny things that in one single stroke eliminates a really common everyday annoyance. And maybe at first people will think you're weird if they're suggesting going for a drink or something and you just send them a link to your calendar. It might seem a bit strange, but it's worth it because I've done this to a few people now and I've kind of apologized and said, this might seem really strange, but it makes it quicker. All of them have booked something and come back and said, I'm going to start using this. This is amazing.
By January, we open the offices in January. RMP will be running on this piece of software because I get a lot of emails and the amount of back and forth between investors that I have saying, oh, can you do this time? Because the investors I work with are busy, successful people as well. So, it's not like they're sitting around all day waiting for something good to happen in the day. They've got full on days too. And it can be a back and forth of 3 or 4 emails before we've done something. So this will be far better for them and therefore far better for me. So it's a fantastic tool. I can't wait to roll it out across all the types of meetings I do.
Okay, so we're going to be linking to that in the show notes and we'll link to Lift App as well if you want to use that. So I think that just about wraps it up for this week, Rob. Next week, we're going to be talking about the insanity of Britain's property market and what it means for investors. Insanity is not our term. We've taken it from somewhere else, but all will be revealed next week.
And finally, if you haven't gone to propertyhub.net, go now, get on the free list at least, and have a look at the extra version as well if you're interested. But as a bare minimum, get on the free version because it's going to be an incredible community for everyone.
Do it. And we will see you back here next week.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Psst, you still there? Okay, now Rob's gone. I just wanted to let you know something about the Property Hub. He wanted us to keep this as a surprise, but I just had to tell you. So what we're going to be doing is next week, we're going to be doing a live webinar, which is going to give you a sneak peek behind the curtains, and it's going to show you what we've been working on all this time. So we're going to show you what we're planning, what it's going to look like, all the features it's going to have. Of course, you're going to have a chance to ask any questions you've got and make any comments that you want to. So we can use your feedback to, as we put the finishing touches to it, we can make sure we incorporate everything you want and make it even better. How do you get in on this? Well, we're going to be doing it next week. So if you're listening to the podcast just after it's come out, make sure you get on our mailing list by this coming Monday, the 18th. So the way to do that is to go to thepropertyhub.net and sign up for notifications. If you've done that already, you're fine. But if you haven't, then get over to thepropertyhub.net, sign up before Monday the 18th, and then we'll send you a link about when we're going to be doing it and to make sure you can get access. If you've already done that, you're fine. If you're on the Property Podcast mailing list, you need to get on the Property Hub mailing list, because if you don't want to hear about it, we don't want to be bothering you all the time. So hopefully you'll be able to do that and you'll be able to join us live. If you're listening to this in the future and you've missed it, or you're not going to be able to make it on the date that we're doing it, we're going to try and make a replay available for you. So you won't be able to ask your questions live, of course, but you will still be able to find out all about it. We might screw up the technology and not actually be able to record it at all. This has been known to happen before. Or we might decide that it's just too painful to let a recording out there where we haven't had our editor let loose on it first. So the only way to be absolutely sure of hearing it is to join us live next week. So as soon as you can, get over to thepropertyhub.net, sign up, and that really is it now. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.